Welcome to Books on Air. I'm Suzanne Harris. Now, Books on Air is a series where we do a deep dive into the writer's passion. We talk about why they wrote the book. We also talk about what their writing process is like, and we find out what they hope their reader will take away from their book. In other words, you get a real glimpse behind the curtain, if you will. Joining me today is a woman that I can't wait to introduce you to. Her name is Jenell Jones, and she's written a very personal book called Shattered. Jenell, welcome to Books on Air. It's such a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You know, often I look at books, and one of the first things that goes through my mind is that each book really has two stories. There's the story that the author chooses to put into the book for the reader. But then there's always a story that's a backstory. Now, your book is such a private, personal book. I'm sure that once we really start talking about this, our listeners will be thinking to themselves, why did Jenell decide she wanted to share this private story with the world? Would you mind sharing that with the listeners?
Sure. Shattered is a very private story, as you said, and the reason why I decided to share it is because a lot of people don't. And the story of my daughter and all that she went through in the adoption, during the adoption process, in the foster care system, it's not new to Mercy. It's something that happens to a lot of children. And I feel because it's so private, because it's so personal, because these children don't have a voice, nobody really knows what really goes on. Therefore, I decided to share what really happened.
It's almost like an invisible world unless you're involved in it. Is that fair to say?
Yes, very much so. And a lot of people think that these children are treated wonderfully, that their needs are met, and we want to live and think that they have lives and it's going to be happily ever after. And I really do think it should be. But if we don't discuss what's going on and some of the injustices that they face, how can we ever get them to a place where they can experience a wonderful life?
Let's start at the beginning. I started to read the very beginning of the book, and your prose is quite beautiful and quite compelling. And I was right there in that church pew with you as you made first contact with little Nikki, as she was called then, but Mercy as she's called now. Let's give our listeners an overview of what the book is about and how this all unfolded.
Shattered is about us meeting little Nikki at the time and how she came into our life at church. And she really had a connection with me. We had an instant bond. And when it came up that she needed a home, I was like, why can't we provide that? And really, it's about what was not told to us, what had happened to her. And at a certain point, we have this child that starts, for lack of a better word, self-destructing. And I had to go on this journey to try to figure out what had happened to her. And then I had to find solutions to help her. And so Shattered is the story of me uncovering all the things that happened to her, and a lot of them weren't good, and then trying to save my child and what it cost my family.
Because she's not an only child. You have other children.
Yes. And I have a lot of children. So I have 7, and I talk about it in the book. And I also owned a lot of preschools at the time. I believe I owned 5. And so I had I wasn't new to watching children, and I'm actually not even new to difficult children. One of my children has autism. My child care centers, we deal with children with behavioral issues, children that have experienced trauma. So I'm not a parent that's not used to hard things. So if I'm struggling with this child, I can imagine what a new parent would be dealing with if they had gotten her and they didn't have the resources. I knew where to look. I knew what to ask, and I still wasn't told.
The whole situation that you described was just amazing to me, because she's not your first adoptive child. You have another adoptive child. And the fact that she had a twin and that she and her twin brother were separated was astounding to me, because if you know anything about education and children and blah, 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 you know that twins have such a different bond with one another. I mean, whenever you see twins talking with and about each other, there is always this, they exchange these looks, and it's just, it's like they have a secret that nobody ever knows. When you described that and talked about her brother Michael and Mercy being separated, it broke my heart. Just broke my heart for her.
Yeah.
And that's something that you
horrible.
I can't imagine. Yeah. And how is she doing?
You know, she still misses her twin, and I've been able to reunite them several times. But what you're saying is so true about twins and their bond and their connection. I believe she knows when something is not right with him. And just recently she was asking about him, and I wasn't able to track him down, and she worries about him. And I think it's so sad that you would separate twins. Now, interesting enough, I've been hearing in the last year sometimes where they have to be separated for the betterment of both twins. I don't think that was the case in this situation. And I believe that if you have to separate twins, we owe twins something, which is at least let a team decide this. Don't let the caseworker decide it. Like, there should be testing. There should be no other option before we have to separate twins. And unfortunately, for her, she's from a family of 10 siblings.
Oh, wow.
And so she's not with any of them, but her twin was placed with his two younger siblings. And if anyone should have been kept together, it should have at least been those two.
I agree. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What you gave me was a glimpse into a system and situations that I had no understanding of before. You had been an adoptive parent before. Mm-hmm. It wasn't this way. You didn't have this kind of difficulty in the previous adoption. Is that right?
Correct. I think if I would have had this difficulty in my first adoption, there's no way I would have adopted again. To be quite honest, this is not something that I would willingly walk into. And it's not even Mercy's issues. It's all of the issues and the lack of support.
And
with my first son...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
With my first son, I had issues. We couldn't get the caseworker to move his case on, and the adoption took too long. But in general, it wasn't like this. It was a lot smoother. Nothing is ever perfect, and I don't expect perfect. But I do expect things to be done in a manner to keep a child safe and happy, to make sure children are in an appropriate environment. people to look out for the best needs of a child. And I feel like that is what is failing a lot of these children.
What about the mental health aspect of all of this for the child? Is there support there for this, or would that be on the adoptive parents, or is there somebody out there that helps?
So in my case, and I believe in a lot of cases, especially when you have a state adoption, I was given state insurance for my daughter. And they do provide mental health services in the state insurance. The issue that I had was it really wasn't adequate for what she had dealt with. And in addition, Mercy had been in the system for a long time, and they had a complete mental health history. They didn't disclose that to me. So not only was I not given adequate coverage by her state insurance, a lot of information was hidden, which if that had been disclosed to me up front, her treatment could have started earlier and it could have been different. Because the thing is with children, brain development, the earlier you can provide intervention, the more successful you are. And so an adopted parent should not have to put a puzzle together. It should be given to us.
Do you think they kept the information from you because they were afraid you wouldn't take her if you knew?
Absolutely. They told me that.
Oh.
They told me that if I had known the truth, I probably wouldn't have adopted her. And I was like, that should have still been my choice. Because by not disclosing the truth, you put my entire family at risk.
This is not the time to keep secrets.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. How has your family done with this whole situation?
You know, it's been challenging for some of my children. It's been challenging for my husband and myself. My daughter, the one that was closest to her, Cherie, she took it the hardest because she really took care of Mercy. But she's doing better. We've had to do a lot of therapy. We've had to have a lot of candid conversations. And actually, I'm really proud of her. At one point, she was working on a nonprofit foundation to help children like Mercy. So we are going to take the lemons we get and we're going to make lemonade one way or the other.
Wow.
And we want to make sure that this system is better for the next family because we don't want people to have to endure what we endured.
Now, you're doing several things to try to push forward issues about this whole situation with adoptive children. Tell me about some of the things that you're doing personally.
So personally, I'm trying to be active in the legislature here in Arizona. Mercy's story has continued, and we've had a lot of hiccups. That's probably a whole nother podcast, to be honest with you, and a whole nother show because we don't want to go into that. But
okay.
I will say I've been working with missing and exploited children with the legislature, trying to get laws passed. We've been working on laws to help the children in group homes, making sure that their care providers are drug tested, making sure that these children have adequate resources, really trying to draw the light. We have something called the Sunset Review in Arizona, and it's a review that looks at the DCS system. And for lack of better words, Arizona was failing miserably, like a lot of other states are too.
Right.
And so really trying to shine light and say, this is not right. These children need to be protected. Because if these were typical children, like in my child care center, the things that occur in these group homes and the things that these children are subjected to under the care of DCS, if I let this happen in my child care centers, I would be on national news. And I was like, what's the difference? So I've been trying to advocate and help these children, along with trying to get exposure for my book. But it's not really about the book. It's really about getting her story out so we can make a change to the system, so we can support families, because it's just a conversation that needs to be had.
You're also doing some private work with groups of parents. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I am available to work with parents and help them in their adoption journey. We've also started Mercy's Mission, and that is actually we want to start a group home in Arizona for children like Mercy. So it's kind of twofold. So we're doing family stuff, family things. Let me get that correct. We want to work and provide resources for families that have adopted and foster children under Mercy's Mission and provide them therapy services. So we're really trying to get Mercy's Mission launched, and we're trying to get the funding so we can provide resources. We don't just want to talk about problems. We really want to be able to provide solutions.
Did you have any idea when you sat down and started to write this book that it would go, I mean, think about the things that you've been saying to me. Did you have any idea that it would get this big?
No, absolutely not. I just wanted to tell my story. And then somebody said, "What's the solution?" And I'm like, "I don't know what the solution is. I'm just going to tell my story." And they're like, "No, you have to provide solutions."
Nope, sorry, can't stop there. Wow. I mean, it's just valiant and heroic seem to be words that describe you, and I'm not trying to flatter you. I think you're doing something that's absolutely amazing. When you thought about the book up front, who did you think you were writing it for? Who did you think about reading it?
You know, I really thought I was writing it for Mercy. I really wanted to honor her story and her struggle. And I really wanted her to know that people care. People care about what happened. If we would have only known, we could have helped. And that's actually one of the things I think that sticks with me is these children, you can do what you want to do to these children because they're all under 18 and they don't have a voice. And a lot of them, they don't have proper education. And how are they going to tell their story? So they're an unserviced population. They're a population that's just overlooked. And I'm like, no, people care. I care. There's other people like me that will care, but they don't know.
Right. Right. I'm sure that our listeners are captivated by what we've been talking about, and I'm sure they want to get a copy of the book. So let's give them a little information so they'll know where to find it. It's on Amazon, and the title of Jenell's book is Shattered, exactly the way you think it's spelled, Shattered, by Jenell, JennellJones. Now, Jenell, sometimes authors would also like to point our listeners into other directions to buy the books. Is there anywhere else that the book is available that you'd like to tell the listeners about?
Yes, it is it is available at Barnes & Noble online, and it's also available on the Church of God in Christ bookstore. So these are all places you can find it.
Well, let's talk about you and your website for a minute, because I went to the website. It's beautiful. People will get to see you. And tell me what's there. Tell me what I'll find, and give me the website address so that I'll know how to find you.
So my website address is JenellJones.com, Jenell, Jones, Jones. And on the website, there's a lot of resources. So we talk about what we're doing. We have listed all the podcasts, all the interviews that we've done. Where we're going to be is listed. We give you resources. So the podcast and the things that we have done and the different information that's available, it's all listed there. In addition, you can buy the book. there's a link to Mercy's Foundation on the book also, on the website also, if you're interested in finding out how you can be a part of that. It is just a evolving website. We want it to grow. We want to be able to put more information on there. And so we're frequently updating it. And so it's something that when you go, definitely put your email address in so we can keep in touch. We really don't just want to tell her story. We really are trying to build community.
Well, this is not just a small problem. This is not just an Arizona problem. This is
Correct.
a gigantic problem. And
Yes.
I think people need to just recognize that what happened to you is not unique. It's happening to others. And if the system is this broken, what can we do for these children so that, I mean, they're going to grow up. They don't stay children. They're going to grow up. They're going to go out in society. Do we want people that have not been supported and not been educated and not been helped through the worst days of their lives? I mean, I don't mean to sound like I'm getting in the pulpit here, but it's true. It's not just one situation, and I really applaud you, literally, for bringing this in such detail to light and for writing this book so that people can see. And I love your website because you have all of the things that you just mentioned. You also have a YouTube channel, and there is a book trailer on the YouTube channel. How can they find that? Just go to YouTube and put in your name?
Yes, just go to YouTube and put in my name. And you can also, there's a link on the website to YouTube, so you should be able to click on the website also and get to the YouTube address. So either one, and subscribe to YouTube. We are actually getting ready to release some more content on YouTube, and we just really want to have conversations that allow you to think about what's going on, because like you said, these children, they are turning into adults. And what I believe we're starting to see with some of our homeless rates are children that have been in the foster care system, that have maybe been adopted also, that have not had stable home environments. Studies are showing that 30 to 40% of the people that are homeless used to be in the foster care system.
Oh, I had no idea.
So it's coming out. It's coming out. We have to address it. And we want to say, I think a lot of times, oh, well, they'll do drugs and they do this. Well, a lot of times they're self-medicating because they don't have the adequate support, so they're self-medicating. And we really have to think about how can we solve this problem. The only way I know how to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
I couldn't agree more. Also, you are on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok, but you don't dance. Now, how can we find you on all of those different social media platforms?
So we've been consistent with my name. So Jenell Jones, Jenell Jones. Also, when you go on the website, there's links to all of them. So if you type me in, just my name, you'll be able to find me on all of the social media sites.
Our time is coming to a close, and I'm really sorry to say that, but it has to end sometime. And I always think that it's very important for an author to have the last word about their book, and especially a book that's as important as the one that you have written. When the listeners turn into readers and they pick up a copy of Shattered, and they sit down with the book and they begin to read it, this is not something that they will read just cover to cover, sit down, 2 hours. No, they're going to sit down with this book and they'll read part of it and they'll put it down and they'll think about what they read. And then they'll go back and they'll read more and they'll think some more. But eventually they will come to that last page. They'll read the last page and they'll either electronically or physically close that back cover. What do you, Jenell, want that reader to take away from your book, Shattered?
What I would like for readers to take away from Shattered is that Mercy is a real person, that Mercy had a real family that adopted her. And the journey that Mercy is on has not been fair. But I want you to think about other boys and girls like Mercy and what we are doing and how we can make this world a better place for them, how we can bring changes. I don't want you to put the book down and close the pages and not think of her. I want her to be a part of you. I want you to be able to look at a child or a person that is in distress and ask the question, what has happened? Is this person's story similar to Mercy? And what can we do to change it? It may not be anything that you can do where they can see it, but really think of something that we can do that can be impactful, even if it's a simple conversation, even if it's standing up for someone's right, if it's writing a letter to the legislature. We need you to care, and we need you to be present and mindful of this population.
Jenell Jones, you are inspirational, you are articulate, you are committed. It is such a pleasure to talk to you, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck with everything that you're doing. Thank you so much for being my guest today on Books on Air.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now remember, the book is Shattered by Jenell Jones, and you can find it on Amazon. You've been listening to the Books on Air podcast, brought to you on Web Talk Radio. You can also hear this podcast on Apple, iHeartRadio, and Stitcher. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, keep reading, keep writing, and keep telling your stories. Thanks again for listening, and we hope to see you next time.